I would like to bring up one small correction here. So I was wrong with saying or questioning virtual apps and desktop of Citrix is not supported in Azure Stack HCI. Thank you, Ernie, for bringing this up in the chat. It's supported for a long time. So 22H2, 2206 version, non-LTSC. So it's for a longer time supported. But I have no idea how it's actually working. And I think the SCVMM argument is still the same. But I would like to bring up some things that have been, brought into discussion by Michael, but not actually on point have been answered. So what I actually like about Hyper-V Azure Stack HCI is like comparing on a high level or nitty-gritty basis. It's like I really hate patching these VMware tools. How often I've seen customers that had issues with after patching VMware tools, like network resets, losing fixed IP addresses and whatnot. So I'm not joking. It's really happening. So these things have made us in our company changing the game and say, okay, we are setting up DHCP two nodes, two VMs that are high available with failover from DHCP internal measures, and using DHCP with reservation and stop using manual IPs because of these catastrophes with VMware all day long. So it's always happening over years. It's happening with the VMXNet adapters. There are issues, tons of issues with E1000 E adapters, so the emulation of Intel adapters, right? I could tell for a half hour what I don't like. So it's nitty gritty, I know, but it's like it's meaning the day for admins. It's basically ruining the day and ruining the weekends. Okay, and I have to say that I agree on repurpose hardware. So what I don't really recommend is, please don't pretend that you can use the same hardware and the same network adapters and the same mix and match of network adapters that you're using for VMware, Nutanix, or whatnot. Please do not. Please read the documentation. Please get help. Have a look into the Azure Stack HCI Slack community. If you're not sure what you're doing, please ask. I've recently read a Reddit which said, good friends do not recommend S2D to friends. I was sitting there like, what the?
That's the same with the Hyper-V on Reddit, right? You don't want to do...
And Reddit is really toxic about Hyper-V. It's really toxic about it.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone on that Reddit channel just wants to create their own
time.
GPU as a service or gaming NVIDIA Now solution on NVIDIA. I'm like, well, that's not toy people.
Just sometimes I'm wasting my life in time that I'm going to Reddit and just reply to some of the, basically playing the debunking myth people. But then two days later, people come up like, why you're necroing this thread 2 years later? Yeah, because there's still bullshit in there. I mean, but this is the point. So if you want to switch, so this is what you were asking, Michael. If you want to switch from VMware to Hyper-V to Azure Stack HCI, don't repurpose. You cannot turn vSAN nodes into Azure Stack HCI nodes. Technically you could, but then you have the problem with who's supporting this stuff. And is the network adapter the correct one? And do you have issues with that? So, and then calculating again the cost. So what does it extra cost to eventually replace network adapters in the running server? And doing all the redos with virtual switching and stuff, it's a nightmare. Yeah, a lot of things. So I think I'm at the end of my words.
I feel like somebody's gonna jump in and like argue that point, Carl. Like if it's a vSAN node, like don't ever repurpose it. Does anybody
you
feel
can,
like that? Like,
but who's supporting it?
Yeah, that is a good point, right? Is it like if you're on Dell hardware, I'll pick on Yarmir. If you're on Dell hardware and they're the Apex or AX ready nodes or whatever you guys call those, and it's it's a VMware nodes like. Okay, it might be the same hardware, but I don't know. For example, if Dell is going to support you, if this was originally for VMware, but now you're trying to use it for Azure Stack HCI. So
basically, when you have vSAN ready nodes and you want to make it Azure Stack HCI nodes, you could potentially do this, checking the hardware list and
try
stuff.
To support, right?
But then, effectively, what you're doing, one word. Effectively, what you're doing is degrading them into validated nodes.
Yeah.
Which is the lowest category of Azure Stack HCI, and that's something you might not want to do.
This is
like not even that, right? Because you can do so. There is one thing, right, that is probably not known much, right? If you use AX nodes, so you use the catalog of the firmware and drivers, right? It's basically you can use a DSU. And then compare against the catalog with what you have installed for the firmware and drivers, right? So, if you're for some reason, if you match the specs of the hardware, which is probably not likely, of your vSAN ready nodes with the Azure Stack HCI nodes, that's probably safe to do. I would not probably do that in the enterprise environment, but if you know what you are doing, then sure, let's do that, right? If you have backplanes, if you have NVMEs, if you have right network adapters, then probably it will work, right? But if shit will hit the fan, someone will need to help you, right? And then when you will probably need some leads from the Ernie, I guess.
There you go.
Anybody can run anything on any hardware, realistically.
Justin.
Like we've done. That's my playground, I guess. I love to toy around and tinker and play and run anything and everything on. Like I just found out I could put Ubuntu on this beautiful Intel iMac that's sitting in the back. That's a comeback from a situation at a client site, and it's useless as a Mac OS device because it's Intel, right? So when it comes to server hardware, it's not hard to repurpose. Yeah, you're right. We can take pretty much anything, even if it's a ready node. Yeah, we get into the question mark of warranty, coverage, whatever. The hardware warranty is the hardware warranty. You give Dell a service tag, they're going to come over and they're going to send a guy over. He's going to see there's no VX rail or whatever on that node, and he's going to go, just replace it and I'll take care of the rest, kind of thing. But you still get your 4-hour warranty. And as far as any of that other stuff, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If you know what you're doing, I think the key here is you know what you're doing, and this is starting to get back into the territory of why Hyper-V and S2D got a bad stick is because people didn't know what they were doing, and they were deploying on unsupported hardware and unsupported firmware and drivers and running these things, and then when it all went tits up, they go, it's the software. Well, no, it's because you built it on an unsupported
That's my point, Daniel. So if you do things and you don't know what you're doing, please don't blame the system and say it's shit. Basically.
Yeah, I've got to jump off, but I just wanted to finish that up with saying something I've been saying for years is the problem with Hyper-V, and I guess there's Azure Stack HCI as well. The problem with Hyper-V is it's on Windows Server, and that's nothing to do, no issue or stab at Windows Server. It's that because Windows Server has a GUI most of the time, and there's a lot of generic, this is not, again, I'm not choosing my words politely here, but I'm being very pointy. They're very generic admins that just have Windows ClickOps. Hey, I've deployed a Active Directory before, or I've turned on file server. I know Windows, I know Hyper-V, and I'm now going to start building Hyper-V clusters. And what do you know? The thing doesn't work because they didn't really know what they were doing. VMware's success was built on VCP program where they had to get certified. They had to get certified partners in to build, validate, get these solutions up and running. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's just software running on tin, but because they're building it correctly, they had successful deployments, and that's, I guess, where that whole integrated node and validated node comes into. I have no doubt that you can give me a ready node or any piece of hardware. I'll make sure that it's got the right supported components with drivers, firmware, and NICs. I'm going to build you a solution that'll work. It'll work really well. But do I believe that 99 other people out there can go and do it? No. They're going to have a bad time, and that's not because I'm better. It's just because I've been doing this stuff for so long.
That's what I mean. Thank you, Daniel.
Yep. absolutely. That's really
this
helpful.
is where 23H2 shines, right? 23H2 will deploy everything consistently for you, right? That's what I really, really, really like about Azure Stack ACI 23H2, right? There's a less way to make it wrong. I mean, you have to be really, really dumb to screw up the installation of the 23H2. If it will succeed, then it's probably deployed correctly.
Yep. Bronson.
I was thinking, so if you did have like a 16 or 20 node VMware cluster, migration path, and you had some fiber channel SANs behind it, a migration path would be to pop. First, go buy 2 Mellanox switches and 2x times Mellanox NICs for every node you have. And then pop off 2 of them, and then wire them up as scale file server in front of your fiber channel SANs. Then get 1 VMware node, put Windows Server on it as a Hyper-V, the first cluster and a Hyper-V cluster. Start moving VMs to it. You've got the disaggregated storage now. Keep popping nodes over until you're down to 2 left and they're empty, and then use those and make 2 more scale file server nodes. And then you're looking at like a 12:4 or a 16:4 ratio, which would be pretty good. Your bottleneck's going to be the 12 gigabit fiber channel SAN at that point. But now that you're in this environment, when you do get new hardware and you do get servers that support S2D, you can just plug it into that RDMA fabric that you have and seamlessly move VMs around and share all the resources.
Right. You can keep the scale fiber channel, right? You don't have to create a scale of file servers, right? You can still keep the fiber channel and just have a traditional Hyper-V cluster, right? And you can move from it anytime you want.
It's gonna cause problems though with I mean, you have to make changes to integrate more S2D clusters later, right? So why not just get it done then when you're making all the changes and move to an RDMA fabric?
If the virtual machine is running on a scale of file server, it's so much easier, right? Because you can run the machine anywhere, right? But the question is now, can I run on Azure Stack ACI a virtual machine that effectively sits on a scale of file server? I think it's doable, right? Technically it works, right? But does it support it, right? Because I like the idea of having a scale of file servers and have a disaggregated clusters. I really, really, really like it, right? Even having Azure Stack ACI running like a storage for the virtual machines and have it as a scale file server, and then just have a compute clusters, because effectively you don't have to add a storage when you need to add more nodes to just have more CPUs and more memory. And this is a big thing for the larger customers, right? Because I had one customer, and their problem was that to increase the memory capacity of the cluster, they had to add the storage. They didn't really need, because they had plenty of the storage. So this is one thing that I think Microsoft should enable customers.
Well, Dell just announced something about that, didn't they? Something to do with like external storage on Azure Stack HCI, which I thought was not supported, but.
So it's a special, right? It's still a cluster shared volume. Technically, it's cluster shared volume, but it's a storage that is attached over 2 additional NICs. So it's a protocol where it's a custom protocol, I think. It's not like a fiber channel, but it's basically using the dedicated NICs that are not included in network ATC, so it's unused. And then basically all of the storage traffic is going over these 2 NICs. And it's mounted as a cluster shared volume, and there's some PowerShell module to do some kind of automation, I think. So it's somehow integrated into the Azure Stack ACI. So probably for the future-proof automation, I guess. But in the end, it's just a cluster shared volume, right? And then probably just the disks that are in the scale file server or in Azure Stack ACI. And basically, you could probably do the same thing, right? If you have a fiber channel storage, technically you could probably attach it into the Azure Stack ACI operating system. It's not supported, but technically you just install MPIO, and it should work, right?
I think that will actually have a detrimental problem if you turn MPIO on a S2D cluster, because now the storage is looking for single paths, right, on the virtual SATA buses.
Yeah.
Now it's going to
But
see 2. It'll see 2 at that point.
but I think it's in the stack it's ignoring it. So I think I had this conversation in 2016. It's a long time when we were talking about MPIO and SCVMM was installing MPIO, and now it's not installing and even uninstalling by default because of this. Yeah. But actually, effectively, it was not used or somehow ignored.
It was just installing the feature, though. It wasn't enabling it.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But I think there's no dual path. Remember, at least for me, in my case, coming from the storage spaces background, that's one of the first red flags, if you will, because all of our deployments were shared SAS JBOD. Whether it's 1, 2, 4 JBODs, when the later model of JBODs came down the road with 8 ports per controller, where we could actually stack some significant amount of nodes versus JBODs. And as soon as we started working with Storage Spaces Direct, and they're telling me, because I'm used to putting, storage spaces, you got to think about columns, you got to think about interleave, you got to think about all these things, and dual paths and the whole thing like that. They went, no, you can't put 2 HBAs in there, but they got 2 paths to the drives. All SAS drives have 2 ports. NVMe, I think, does now with the later revision. They have 2 pathways as well, capable of full duplex. But Storage Spaces Direct has never had the ability, and that includes Azure Stack HCI as far as the HCI component, has never had the capability of doing dual paths. So it is a single path situation. With Dell, I have no idea what they're doing, if it's some sort of black magic, if there is dual paths in there or what.
A dual path requirement was there because your paths were tied to the physical cables, the physical SAS cables, right? Now with Storage Spaces Direct in the SBL layer, you have virtual SAS adapters that connect to everything.
But there's always one disk. There's always one disk, right? There's no multiple disks with the same IDs, right?
Right. Your redundancy to the disks, though, is done over the network.
Right.
In this case now. So they just moved it up further in the stack.
There are no
out of the hardware.
Two storage path. Yeah, there you have it's like a single storage path because it's 2 storage paths, but it's different layers. So it's like not 2 disks with the same ID, right? So this was the MPIO solving. So anytime you had 2 IDs in the system, instead of seeing 2 disks with the same ID, you saw 1 disk. Right, so this was the MPIO 4, and then effectively it doesn't do anything if you enable it on a Storage Spaces Direct, right? So there are no 2 paths; there's just 1 path, so there's nothing to do with it. So technically, I think it should work because I've been asked so many times from the customers, "Hey, we do have some existing workload. We want to migrate from it somehow using the same SAN. We just want to, show the SAN into the Azure Stack HCI. So instead of having additional SCALA file server, you could in theory put a fiber channel on each node, but then we get into the situation that you are plugging some hardware into verified configuration, and that's where it's unsupported, right? Because the validation was done on the hardware without the fiber channel card.
I would always recommend the SCALA file server approach.
Yeah, so the SCALA file server approach is there, right? It's a good one,
especially since you have nodes that are getting they're coming out of production. You're migrating off of them. So, and they already have fiber channel cards in it. They're already wired up.
I'll ask you, maybe this is a question. iSCSI, I mean, that's over the network, right? There's limitations there, but then you can still use your existing networks. You're not adding hardware.
iSCSI SAN you can use. It is supported to use it inside a virtual machine. And for that, I would probably go with single root IO virtualization, SRIOV, just to have 2 SRIOV NICs and then basically connect to the iSCSI using these NICs. Probably will be really, really fast and really convenient. So, really, really fast. I mean,
sure. So anyway, the whole reason I brought this up is just because I knew Dell had announced something about it. I was kind of curious, what are they doing? And it kind of sounds like so far it's still a little bit of black magic, and it's some really specialized and specific configurations. It sounds to me like it's really only supported by Dell, not Microsoft specifically.
No. It's actually supported by both, right? So you have to validate it. So you have to validate. So you have to. So the thing is, right? So now we are talking about scenarios that will work technically. It's not supported, but it works, right? And meaning supported means that we ship the hardware into the Microsoft data centers, and they will run CI/CD pipeline to validate all of the tests, and everything has to be green, right?
Yep.
So, and they kind of need to think about this in the product, right? When you think about scale-out file servers, they will not think about this in the product. So there will not be any option to be able to map scale-out file server from the Azure portal, something like that. Maybe it is, I don't know. I didn't try to add the storage path in the cluster configuration in the portal, where you configure the virtual machines. You can add the locations of your storage. So maybe / scale-out file server name works. I don't know. But probably no one tested it, right? So that's why it's unsupported, right?
Yep.
Because there's unsupported.
I see some Franken labs in your future, Jaromir.
I mean, there is unsupported and unsupported, right? Because you can now think about Fiber Channel with Windows Server unsupported because no one is testing it anymore, right? To be honest, no one is probably running traditional clusters. Well, it absolutely works. It's perfectly. It's still supported. But it's, I know it's a kind of gray zone because no one is really running it and testing and doing any validations against it because everyone is like, yeah, it's probably working, right? So you just go with some basic validation in the Windows Server with the Fiber Channel cards and that's it, right?
Another Windows Server advantage for large deployments is the ability to use cluster sets. To have a unified storage space.
Did you try to use it? I do have a lab in MS Lab, but I think the original idea of cluster sets was, so the way it works is that you have a one unified namespace where if you access it, like scale-out file server path, you see all of the shares or all of the volumes from all of the clusters, right?
Yeah.
That's it, right? So you have virtual machine running on cluster A, and it can access this common scale-out file server, and will be redirected into the
PowerShell that comes with it does give you some placement logic, though.
Right.
If you want to deploy sets of virtual machines.
Yeah, this one is good, but I think the original idea was to connect it with the storage replica and have some kind of fault domains. And then have some kind of high availability between the multiple clusters.
I thought the purpose
was I saw
to
when I
growing your namespace and keep adding compute only or storage only or HCI clusters to keep expanding.
Yeah, well, it would be cool. It would be cool. Yeah. It would be cool. I'm really
not a lot of people use it.
It requires a lot of scale.
I'm really sad that
we have touched this before. So there are a lot of features that are not commonly used. I have been even blamed for using Azure Stack HCI with Windows Server Data Center Azure Edition, and support told me, I mean, it's not for everyone, but the support told me that's an Edge configuration. I say, why? I mean, Azure Edition is exactly made for that. What is the edge here? That's what I wanted to say. So when you use like cluster set, and there is even VM groups and all those things, so there are a lot of things that exist, but the point is how often they are used in production. So if you have some issues, you may not find someone who's having experience to help you, even in the Stack community eventually.
There is a thing, right? So one thing is what is included in the product. There are so many things, like you can do weird things that are in the PowerShell, like you could create a virtual disk in the spaces and attach it into the virtual machine. There is a PowerShell for that in the product. But would you do that? Because there is no infrastructure built around this, right? You don't see it in a Windows Admin Center. It's the same thing as we discussed the scope volumes, right? You probably will not use it because you don't have any infrastructure around it. You cannot see it from the Azure portal. You cannot see it from Windows Admin Center. If you need to create it, you need to go into the PowerShell, and you really need to know what you are doing.
The great thing about Microsoft and Windows Server is that they're primarily a platform company, right? And so they build platforms that you build products on top of and you build services on top of.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
all these things we mentioned are great tools for you to build things with.
That's spot on. I mean, this is spot on, right? Because the Windows Server is the way that you will build services on top of that, right? While Azure Stack HCI, you buy a service that is built for you. Right. Already, it's and you don't have to figure out all of these things. You just consume it, which has a pros and cons, right? So, and with Windows Server, you have this, let's say, stability, right? Because you have one release, it will be not touched for 3 years because there will be another release in 3 years, in theory, and it will be supported for 10 years since release. Right, so you can basically build a solution, forget about it for 10 years, go away, right, and then in 5 years you can just walk in and say, "Yep, do you want a new hardware?" Yeah, you'll just place the new hardware, migrate the workload, keep the same operating system, something like that, right? So it's absolutely stable, right? It works for the virtual machines.
Oh, I think you cut out there for just a second, but.
My for some reason, like it jumped in the screensaver.
No worries. There was. I keep saying like we should wrap this up, and then everybody's like, "No, we got."
It could be an extended. You can cut the normal one and then have
director's cut or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Director's cut.
Well, hey, so Jaromir, you put in the chat, and I was really interested to pitch this topic out there again. Was Azure Virtual Desktop, which is, I think, one of the biggest draws right now for people to talk about Azure Stack HCI and the ability to run that on-prem. Bronson's like, oh, come on, RDS. I
mean, we've had RDS forever. It's in Windows Server.
But basically, you're moving the whole control plane to where you don't even have to manage the control plane anymore. That's the beauty in my mind of
that's
Azure,
the beauty. I know.
It's now that's a platform service. Right. I don't have to care.
Technically, though, your control plane, your traffic has to go up to Azure and then come down to your site, right?
You got FastPath. You have FastPath.
FastPath requires money, a lot of money. That is expensive.
Tell me why, because maybe I don't know the answer to this.
ExpressRoute.
You have to have ExpressRoute to do FastPath?
For an unsecured UDP path, yeah, unless they've magically made it somehow so you don't need a secured VPN for it or a secured route.
Okay. So what you're saying is in order to use FastPath, you have to have ExpressRoute because you have to be able to control the routing of the traffic. You can't use VPN.
You are talking about RDP short path, or
yes.
Okay, so RDP short path is more or less, if you see it, it will automatically switch to the RDP short path and UDP if you are able to resolve the local network adapter, right? So,
yep.
That's it. If you are able to connect to the local network adapter, it will automatically switch to UDP. So if you are on the same network or VPN, it should.
Yeah, if you're in the same room, it'll work, right? But if you're in the same room, why are you connecting to a remote desktop?
Or same network?
I'm going to interject here for a moment. I had a conversation back at Summit because I was in one of the AVD sessions, and I put up my hand and I said, "Okay, so what's the value here?" What do you mean? I said, "What's the value here?" Okay, so we've got AVD, right here. We've got RDS. We've got Citrix and all the others that can layer on top of it. There's a third option in my brain's VDI. Okay, Windows Desktop in RD Farm. Okay, so we've got 3 Windows native capabilities here. What's the outcome? And that's kind of like, wait a minute, what? Okay, let's refocus. Let's turn the truck around completely 180 degrees, and let's get away from looking at the dials and knobs in the admin console, if you will, like you say, the control pane, and start looking at what the user experience is. So between the 3 options, we've got Windows Desktop, and I'll be honest with you. Back in the SPLA days, early SPLA days, Windows Vista was actually under SPLA. So we had VDI environments left, right, and center that were just absolutely gorgeous. group policy in a desktop VDI solution is really hard to crack out of it. Remote desktop services is second, but you just got to start using loopback, and there's trouble there. I mean, I haven't worked with AVD, so let's talk about outcomes. Click, 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 type, 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 click, 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 type, 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 type. What is the business value? Okay. What is the business value? I'm a business owner. I own my own business with my wife. What are you telling me I am getting out of click, click, type, 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 type that I am now paying 40% more for in AVD? Yeah, what am I getting? What's the value? You got to tell me what the value is for AVD versus remote desktop services. Or even better, we've got VDI SA licensing, enterprise licensing on all of our desktops in our client sites and our site. So we get VDI by default, right? So we're paying for that component. We're paying for RDS. We got RDS CALs, and we're paying for VDI with Windows Desktop, which gives us granularity. What does AVD give us? Yeah, it admins the excitement of the control plane and the cloud and all that kind of stuff. But is that a business value at our level? At my level is, up to, so let's say 2,000 seats.
So
I couldn't get an answer out of that one.
It does. So they made it as a response to not being able to have Windows Enterprise under SPLA for multi-tenant hosting, right? But you can have it in Azure because they have the right qualifications for it. They're an SPLA hoster technically. So it simplifies. You get the license out of your E3 or your E5, which simplifies all the licensing requirements, including with VDI, you had to have the VDA license in case you wanted to connect to it with like an iPad or something that wasn't a Windows device, right? This is covered by that now, and it simplifies a lot of that. And it's a real Windows client.
Codes, yeah.
In your data center, you can now use Windows Server in the VDI role with the RDVH role as attached to it since Server 2016, and that's an okay option because the server's been looking more and more like the client since 2016 going forward. 2022 looks great now as a desktop.
And device is exactly the same. So it's even having things that I even complained and said, okay, it's too much of a client.
Yeah. But I agree. I think it's way better value to do RDS out of your data center for your customers, unless you have an application that actually won't run a Windows Server and you can't hack the MSI to install on Windows Server, and it just will not do it for some reason. Put it on the Windows Server RDS.
I think the simplicity of deploying Azure Virtual Desktop is significant compared to a highly available RDS farm, especially at a smaller scale. Because tell me how many servers you need for a completely highly available RDS backplane, not the host, just
with authentication.
4 and a load balancer.
Yeah.
Certification authority.
Two physical servers. We've been running RDS on S2D since 2016. We've been running RDS on converged Hyper-V and storage spaces since 2012 RTM 2. The users, if there's a situation where one of those nodes goes out, then we've got a POM.
You're combining the gateway and broker roles then, Philip?
Yeah, back in the day, we'd run all in one. Now we run two. We run a broker, web, and gateway, and a separate session host.
Well, that's not highly available, though.
No, I'm not talking about.
No, that's what I'm saying.
That's what he was asking.
But it is highly available. It's running on a cluster.
No. If that VM,
I'm playing with the words. I know. I'm playing with the words.
You need four VMs and a load balanced IP.
Yep. So now you've got highly available SQL, which is more expensive than the SQL, right? So you've got highly available SQL. You've got 2 copies of the what is it? 2 copies of the gateway and 2 copies of the broker. The broker, right?
So if you want MFA, you need separate NPS servers as well.
Then you need NPS. You need to set up your certificate authority and do that. There's a lot to doing that.
You don't
right?
have to
I'm not saying
you don't have
you don't need a
MFA.
certificate
You want to have
authority.
if you want to have MFA, right? So how you will do this?
Yeah. So
No longer.
Like a built-in MFA.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
you
the NPS
have to have
servers
authentication, right?
with the Azure
You may-
MFA extension for NPS on the NPS server.
But that's
and
no
they-
longer there, in my opinion.
No, it
still
is.
supported?
It is. Yeah. What you're thinking of that's been deprecated is the Azure MFA server, which is a
okay.
whole separate
Yeah,
product.
pardon me.
This is just
Yeah.
this is a plugin for NPS, and what you do
Fuck.
on
How
your
many people who are listening to us will know what the NPS is?
network policy server. Well, if you're running the gateway, okay. So
server.
this
If
is
you run
IT, though.
Wi-Fi,
I know.
you know.
right. But
Yeah,
the point
if
is,
you run Wi-Fi, you have it.
you just said that what's the value? And to me, the value is the control plane. As an admin,
Complexity.
I have 6 or 8 less operating systems I have to manage and configure. I don't have to know how to configure highly available SQL. I don't have to know how to configure all of these extra things. My control plane is just there. I register my host to the AVD control plane, and now my users can connect from anywhere with MFA and conditional access enabled. There's a lot of simplicity that just took place there, and a lot less management overhead.
You're talking about a company that is going to be in the thousands of users.
Because I would say if you have thousands of users, go to RDS.
Let's back the truck up again. Because if we're talking about licensing costs relative to those outcomes, this is where it's important as well. Yeah, okay, so HA, RDS, okay, that's all the VMs and all that other stuff. But the reality is that an RD farm that's running on a cluster already with anti-affinity for our session hosts. So if you have two for 2 for, or you got 3 for 3 for. So you end up in a situation where if we're going to have a problem, we're going to have a problem. Higher availability is going to end up bumping somebody somewhere, right? So if you've got 35 users per node or session host, whatever, somebody's going to be inconvenienced somewhere. So what's the cost of that inconvenience? We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars here to get all of that into Azure.
You need to patch
on AVD.
You need to patch your Windows VM. You need to patch all of these things. And so now we're talking about monthly downtime for your solution because
what?
If it's
because
HA,
I still understand
Yes.
Philip, right?
Yes.
Philip can build a highly available on top of the S2D with just 2 nodes where you basically don't have a SQL for the broker and all this stuff, right?
The application is not
I know, but
available.
but
at
it's
a
good
hardware
enough.
level, it's highly available. There
but
is
you're being
even if
technical.
that. I'm not disagreeing.
Even if you build AVD, right, you will use GPUs and then you would also lose the highly availability because you have to kick off all of the users when host will go down, right? So because you are not able to migrate, right?
Well, you accomplish HA in the session hosts through pooling though. But if Philip's only running one on a cluster and it gets crypto locked, then it's down. Not the cluster, the session host.
I know. I'm talking. I get the session host thing. That's really easy. It's the control plane.
Down too. See, we're talking ducks to ducks.
It's the control plane to set it up to where you won't have downtime with patching or some other issue in your OS, in your control plane VMs. That's where the value is.
Microsoft and no downtime and SLA.
I'm going to be blunt.
I'm going to be blunt here. I'm going to express a very unpopular opinion here.
Go for it.
And that is SLAs are meaningless. Absolutely meaningless. Because when your company is down, I'm going to take our smaller accounting firm clients, and we're talking $5,000 to $10,000 an hour. Okay? And SLA, I'm going to get a couple $100 because my VM was down for 5 minutes. Or whatever the case. Express route, I'm going to get $1,000 for 20 minutes of downtime. That's absolutely meaningless. It's a piece of fluff paper to make me feel good. Okay? The reality is, again, we're coming back to outcomes. Stop focusing on the admin stuff. That's tech bubble kind of thing.
But you cost money, Philip. You deploying that costs money. How many hours does it take to deploy
our cost? Okay, again, amortization, right? 60 months. The cost of our solution over 60 months, all in, is still less than what it would cost you to put it all in the cloud, by about 60% less.
I don't disagree with that, because again, Azure Stack HCI, on-prem, I agree. You could come out cheaper buying your hardware, but still it takes more time and money to set up an on-prem, highly available backplane than it does to just use the AVD backplane.
We can set up a race. I'll set up on a 2-node on my end, and you set up on Azure Stack. And we're talking bare metal scratch, okay, from start to finish. It'll be interesting to see who comes up with a
that would be solution. So fun. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
May I bring up a comparison what I'm seeing about this topic? So when you think about doing the things with Citrix, right? We talked about the VMware tag sometime in the episodes, but let's talk about Citrix virtual apps and desktop. So what I know, what people are doing, because I'm not the Citrix guy, okay? I don't pretend. So they have 1 or 2 VMs for storefront. They have 1 VM for licensing server. They have 2 VMs for PVS. These PVS have ReFS storage for high performance merge and so on. Yes, we have at least 1 file server for hosting the FS Logic profiles. That makes 6 now. And then we're starting to finally creating a host. It's huge, and you're paying
That's
for
why
this,
you want to have a Swiss knife like Philip has, right? Where you have just 1 single node with licensing and everything. Basically, you can just have 1 or let's say 2 nodes, and it will do the job, right? For a company of 10 nodes.
I just say, and then we are at 6, and then you have also 2 net scalers for external access, right? You have 2. You will have 2. For really HA. And imagine the costs, and no one is really caring about it. People are paying it with free will. And they're not even blaming anyone for raising costs and for changing Citrix now on NetScaler licensing and all the things. It's not happening. So what we're talking about here,
it reminds me this picture with the four frames where you have this swing, what the client wanted. And what was built by architects, what was built, and what a customer really needed, right? So I absolutely agree, right? That we are now in the conversation like, is it Azure Stack HCI or is it Windows Server, right? Because you can build really awesome solutions with Windows Server, and it will be absolute Swiss knife for the customer, right? Or you can have a really good solution like Robust with Azure Stack HCI. With the broker in Azure, basically with AVD, whatever, and customer will be also happy, right? But it also depends. Do you want to have a Swiss knife, like it works, it's reliable, will cost you close to nothing, but you have to find a really good consultant like Philip or Bronson or someone who you trust, and he will build you awesome solutions, right? Or do you want to have someone generic off the street? He probably don't know much, but he knows how Microsoft works, and you want to have like a reliable solution where reliable solution. If some admin will leave, next admin will probably know what to do. Yeah, probably AVD.
And that's also a fair point, Jeremy. We should discuss. So we should admit that we are all getting older, and the people that are coming into this job to the IT are not on the same level, and maybe not are willing to get this on this level. I'm not like blaming someone that are not willing at all, but
it's a
different attitude, in my opinion.
If you jump in the train, it's easier to see it in the Azure portal how it's running, and you will probably know what the stuff is. And if you have a problem, you open a ticket, right? Then in just going into infrastructure blind, then you have to somehow discover what's running on the service.
And we have 2 aspects here, in my opinion. So we have the Microsoft side, where you have to think about the developers. They might not even have the expertise, the long-term expertise over decades, like Philip and others, that they don't know even every nut and bolt, and they are designing products and they don't have the experience from the product, right? You know what I mean? I'm not sure if you get what I mean. And this is the good thing to be MVP. So we have the conversations, and we can basically say, okay, this is how we're actually using it. So this is where Philip comes in again and says, okay, where's the use case? It's like pointing out, okay, you are not actually using the product. You are designing it, you are developing it. It's great. What you're doing is a great job, but you have to see the user perspective and the business perspective as well. So Philip has a great point. So, but what I want to say, coming down to the essence, we have to admit that we are getting older, and the people that are coming after us are on a different level and are working differently. And the developers on Microsoft side also working differently and thinking differently. So maybe we get to a point where people maybe cannot live without the Azure portal anymore. You know what I mean?
You are on the point. You're on the point, because when I was working for the Microsoft like 4 years ago, when you were working with Windows Server, you were not relevant at all, because you were not increasing ACR, Azure Consumption Revenue, right? So basically, in Microsoft, all of this knowledge is lost about Windows Server. And the same is for the field, right? If you don't know Azure, you have to know Azure, right? So a lot of admins they do just know Azure only. And we are kind of unique because we still know what Windows Server is, how Active Directory works, what NPS Server is, Network Policy Server is, how you like how DHCP works. So
they just deprecated direct access, by the way. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Pardon me
direct
for
access
evening, but it's true.
I still remember a crit when I was, when the direct access was really working only on the Windows Server. When it was introduced in Windows Server 2008 or 8R2, I think you had to have what was the firewall name? Firewall product.
Microsoft ISA.
ISE, yes. ISA, yeah,
Internet
ISA.
Security and Acceleration Server.
Oh, please don't
SBS 2000, SBS 2003.
And you had to have this one to be able to run direct access correctly. And then it was, redesigned in Windows Server 2012, 2012.
And now it's deprecated, officially deprecated.
Yep.
Thank you.
But let me jump back again. So to tag off of both of your points, AVD. So the agility though is something that I just can't get away from when I talk. I know, Philip, you challenged me to a race. In Azure, it's like a few clicks and I'm done. Like I don't have to order hardware. I don't have to order none of that, right? And that's a different conversation altogether. And I know Philip's got his own cloud philosophy, but there's a business value there of somebody being able to call and say, "Hey, I need a couple hundred users to have desktops yesterday," and you can just go do that, right? I know, you're on mute, Bronson. You're on mute, Bronson. That's why we need spare capacity.
Only running Microsoft Office and Teams, right? What happens when you want some good applications on there like Bluebeam or AutoCAD? You know?
Yeah, well, you'd have to package them and all.
Yeah. That's even a bigger pain in the ass than it is, bigger pain in the butt than it is with RDS.
So anyway, it's still not one size fits all. But I came from the like on-prem data center world to a more like cloud focused, company, and so it's been really neat to experience that, like what normally would have taken weeks, doing it in a day or two. And that doesn't, I know there's more to it than that, but agility in the cloud is real. And so cost in the cloud is real too. I'm not denying that. But again, back to business value. If the agility has business value, then it's worth it. So anyway.
Agility is the human being that's clicking something to make something happen, and then the agility falls flat when the thing they just clicked on doesn't work.
How agile is a bicep file?
Right.
And then on top of that, see, here's another aspect to the business aspect is, okay, so you've clicked, And the number of times I've heard that, okay, I'm clicking. Oh, wait a minute, I better not click anymore. I just got to sit and wait for it to catch up. Now, then, here comes the fun part. Click support. Click open ticket. Click Sev A, B, C, D. Let's go Sev A because my business is down. Click Sev A. Click. Turns out there's 100,000 other people clicking Sev A at the same time as me on top of that. Okay. Now, our system or somebody along the lines of us, an MSP who provides an on-prem or hybrid solution, something goes down, what ends up happening? Phil, fix it now. They've actually got a neck to hold and they got somebody to talk to. So the business value on the cloud side is, do I become a gnat on the arse of an Angus bull? And I don't know if you all have ever stood in the presence of an Angus bull, but it's one of the biggest bovines in the world, and they are freaking massive, very intimidating animals. Anyway, Charlet comes second. We had one in our yard. That is a very intimidating animal up close. So, are you a gnat, which is microscopic, on the back of a Black Angus bull? Or are you somebody of value?
That is exactly where the value.
Are you somebody of value that you can pick up the phone and say, hey, Phil, John, Joe, Jane, Adrian. Oh, Adrian, it's not working. And guess what? It works.
I can't strongly disagree with you about the support experience because, it's Microsoft support and everybody loves to give them a hard time about it. But that's exactly where the value of a good cloud partner is as well, right? Because I will say 9 times out of 10, it's actually not a problem with the platform. It's usually something they've done wrong. That doesn't mean there's never problems with the platform because
who is they? Microsoft, like for getting cert renewals or DNS?
No. I'm talking about.
That reminds me of the meme
9 times out
cartoon.
of 10, it is the client doing something that they shouldn't have done in Azure, and now they need help fixing it. And
the consultant,
or the cloud consultant. Right.
Oh,
so somebody's broken something.
All those problems that we had back in the SBS, SMB, small business, medium, large business, that stuff has not gone away despite the promise that it was going to go away. We've got folks that say that they're experts at nothing's changed. Absolutely. What has changed is IT bills have climbed 4 to 10 times. Mm-hmm. For what? For the same thing? So we get a pretty pane of glass to click on. And I'm being a bit of a smart sphincter muscle here. But the reality is, again, we dollars to donuts. When we do an evaluation, I'm firmly in the on-prem camp. I've been called interesting names by folks who are firmly in the cloud camp, right? But the business reality for me as a business owner is I've got to present value. And if the value is there for the control plane, if the value is there for me to click and have 5,000 users productive tomorrow, okay, but I can do that too, and so can Bronson. And so can many other people who do the on-prem or the hybrid environments where we can do a very similar experience.
And that value proposition is so hard to communicate sometimes. That's why I just sell the virtual desktop.
Oh, no, it's breaking.
Hello?
No, everybody was just waiting for everybody else to talk. I'll just say, I love this conversation, Philip, because it really, I think, unlocks the meme, the Simpsons guy. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. I got stalled there. My internet connection stalled. So there's a meme out there. There's a frog in a stork's mouth, and the frog has his hands around the stork's throat while the stork is trying to eat the frog, right? And so the frog is saving his own life by choking the stork while the stork is trying to kill the frog. You know what? It's around, or the snake eating the tail, or whatever the case may be. The business value, and I'll stop with this. I do have a burr in my bonnet. Historically, Microsoft hasn't been very pleasant to small to medium business partners. So there is a bit of a burr in my bonnet. But the on that side of it, But on the other side of it is, the burr in my bonnet is the promise that turned out to be a false promise that cloud gives you more agile, which it really doesn't in the long run. The cloud is cheaper. Male bovine excrement, it ain't cheaper. IT bills across the board have gone up substantially. Subscriptions are about revenue for the subscription provider. They aren't about the customer. And anybody who says, "Oh yeah, we're doing this for the customer," again, male bovine excrement. And I'm going to be blunt. Well, no, maybe I won't use that one. Okay, I'll be blunt. It's not about you and me, folks. It's about making money. And in this case, it's about making way more money than we would have selling one license. Time slicing on servers. It's about containers are not about making things smaller. It's about making that time slice smaller. So instead of getting $10,000 an hour on that server, I'm now getting $45,000 an hour. That's where we're at here.
That's a point. If you don't have Azure Hybrid benefits. But again, Phil, it's one thing that we still miss. So we are also, I mean, same as the people that are now thinking about Broadcom in the situation or Citrix in the situation with changes and licensing and stuff. So when I'm seeing something like the latest deprecation list, and I've also wrote a small blog about this, what means deprecation, how to handle it in practice, then what would you do if Microsoft one day really say, okay, like I think it was Carola Pantenburg from Germany. She's a consultant for M365, very talented woman, a good mentor. And she said once, years ago, she said, RDA, remote I suppose, is dead. That was her words, and it was quite picked up in the community. And now, I mean, it's still there. And we had 2 rollbacks from Microsoft, U-turns, where they said, okay, M365 is not supported. Server 2019, the same happened with Server 2022. And now we have a support policy that says, okay, we are supported within the first 5 years, which is maintenance support, so mainstream support, which makes it very good. So it's predictable now, right? That's what everyone wanted. So it's predictable now. It's supported in 2022. It's supported in 2025, and we have a predictional thing. But what would happen if they once said, okay, we are not supporting RDH anymore, and we would deprecate it?
They've already tried that, Carl.
Deprecated.
Carl,
they just recently, pardon me.
They've tried it over and over again. They've been pushing as hard as they can up against the on-premises side of things.
The point with direct access was really like, oh yeah, that is interesting. Suddenly, no one really expected this. You know.
Yeah. Anyway, hey.
All right, time to done. I've got some things I got to focus on and get my arse and gear ready to get out of the shop.
I think this was probably really helpful and great for listeners to hear the on-prem cloud, hybrid, this back and forth. This was awesome. I love this, and I always appreciate your points.
Too.
Yeah. So all that to say.
Value.
Thank you to all of you. Thank you so much for joining this. This panel has been a lot of fun. The whole series has been a lot of fun. I'm sure that our listeners got value out of this. I can't imagine anybody watching all of these and not learning just a ton through this. So much experience on the calls. So really appreciate it. I'll just say again to our listeners, thanks for listening. Of course, if you want more content, you can find me at richardsoncloud.com. And all of these lovely folks have some of their own blogs and their own things that they do too. So thanks again, everybody.
Join the stack.
Absolutely. There's a Slack channel, Azure Stack HCI. I put it in some of the comments before, but you guys feel free to do the same. So thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah, take care. Thank you for having us.